Once upon a time, if you had have told me that there was a difference between healing and thriving, I probably wouldn't have believed you. Back then, before I had healed, or if we're really honest, I wouldn't have even acknowledged that I needed to heal because the reality was my life was fine. I wasn't terribly unhappy. And I think that's really important to talk about. I had experienced a lot of trauma, yes, but my life wasn't miserable every single day. Now, I know this is not the reality for everybody, but this was mine. The fact is that my life was actually pretty good most of the time, but I lived in cycles. So when my cycles dipped, which was often when I hit burnout, I was not good, as in very, very, very bad. I would have 2 weeks of deep depression, suicidality. It was not good. And then I would come out of it, and everything was okay. I had a good life, I had friends, I had a good job. There was nothing wrong. And as I said, I wouldn't have ever admitted that or acknowledged that I needed to heal. It was only when I got to the point where I hit rock bottom that I thought I needed help, that I realized that I needed to heal. I knew that there was stuff that I didn't want to talk about. I knew there was trauma in my life. I knew there were parts of my past that I kept a secret, a really, really big secret that no one knew. But once I opened that can of worms, holy fuck. It was just this lifting the veil of everything that I'd tried to contain or tried to suppress. And then, like, when I was at rock bottom, I was going through the worst season of my life, struggling with my identity, or more so having the identity I had created for myself ripped away from me. And in my mind was like, I'll just get help for now. I'll just see someone for now, only to realize that I had a shit ton of healing to do. And I had tried previously to broach some of the subjects with different psychologists, only to be met with resistance or nothing, which is really, really disheartening. When you open yourself up to someone and are vulnerable with someone and try and ask for help, only to be, it's almost like, oh no, this is out of my league. Right. And that realization, hit me like a ton of bricks, I would say. And it was then where I had the belief that, if I can heal from all of this, if I can come to a place where I'm okay with everything that's happened, then I'll be thriving. And while being healed was a hell of a lot better than previously, I wasn't thriving. It's a bit of a letdown, if I'm honest. Healing allowed me to be good. It allowed me to be comfortable. It allowed me to be grounded. It allowed my nervous system some space to breathe. But in order to thrive, there were more steps that I needed to take. It required me to start focusing forward rather than surviving. It meant that I needed to look at, what did I actually want to do with my life? How did I want to feel? What did I want my values and intention and purpose to be, over let's just get through today. And for this episode, I could talk about my journey and what that looked like, and the difference between healing and thriving, and who I was compared to who I am now, and all of that. But I kind of want there to be information in this episode that make it real for you. So yes, I can talk about it, and if you listen to this and you want me to share anything, please just reach out to me. I'm an open book, and I'm happy to share anything. But I also want to kind of make it a little bit practical so you can see the difference between healing and thriving. For me, when I look at the fundamental difference for me in how I felt, being healed allowed me to be grounded, content, not live in fight or flight. Thriving, I have purpose. I'm fulfilled. I'm like so content in who I am. I love who I am. I love the life that I've created. That to me is thriving. So let me break down a bunch of things that kind of expand on the difference. The first one, healing is about safety, thriving is about expansion. So, as I've said in my example just now, healing focuses on stabilizing your nervous system and helping you feel safe again. So, when people say they've healed, it usually means that they feel good about themselves. They feel comfortable. They aren't constantly living in that survival mode. Anxiety might be less. They understand their triggers. They can regulate their emotions better. Thriving, however, is about expanding beyond safety. So, taking risks to chase your dreams, pursuing your desires, not just avoiding pain, allowing and embracing joy, visibility, fulfillment, creating a life that genuinely excites you, not one that just feels manageable. A lot of people, and this might feel true for you, stop it, I feel okay now. But okay or good or fine isn't the same as fulfilled and alive. Okay is great. Don't get me wrong. Okay is great. And also, there's room to grow. Bottom line, healing removes past pain, thriving creates possibility. The next point, you can be healed enough to function, but still unconsciously limiting yourself. Let's break this one down. This is where high functioning trauma survivors often live. You know, they have insight, they understand their patterns, they have self awareness, they aren't in crisis anymore, but they still hold themselves back, play small, put themselves down, avoid visibility or intimacy or risk, and default to like previous emotional states. Not because there's anything wrong with them, but because their system still associates expansion with danger. And when you've lived in a state of fight or flight because you're so worried about causing more pain, of course it's going to be harder to step out of that. Thriving requires you to teach your nervous system that it's safe to receive more, not just safe to survive. The next one. Healing often focuses on the past. Thriving requires building a relationship with your future. So when we think about the healing that we need to do, we're looking at what happened. Why do I feel this way? How do I regulate this? How do I let go of this? How do I acknowledge this? Thriving asks, what do I want now? Who do I want to become? How do I want to feel? What kind of life do I want to create? Some people become very comfortable in the identity of someone who is healing. Thriving requires the identity of someone who is living. And that identity shift can be quite big because when we're healing, we can kind of avoid extra discomfort because it's like, oh, I'm focused on this. I'm focused on this. I'm learning this. I'm doing this. I'm actioning this. And some people do get stuck in that, never ending loop of healing. And thriving is acknowledging that, okay, I'm good now. And now I want to live. And it's a big difference. The next point, your nervous system may feel more uncomfortable. Sorry. Your nervous system may feel more uncomfortable with joy than pain. If you want to flip that, more comfortable with pain than joy. And this is one of the most understood parts, I think. If you have spent years in survival mode, your nervous system becomes really familiar with stress, hypervigilance, emotional suppression, predictability, overachieving. Joy, ease, calm, and fulfillment can feel really unfamiliar. And as we know, unfamiliar feels unsafe. This is why people sometimes sabotage good things without understanding why. Not because they want to suffer, but because their nervous system doesn't understand what it is to feel joy. Because if you're functioning and operating on autopilot, from this level of I'm just going to get this done so I don't have to think about anything else, and switching that to a place of I want to feel really good. It requires a different energy. It requires you to show up differently. And of course your nervous system is going to feel a bit uncomfortable with that. So this is about like gently expanding your capacity to lean into and hold space for joy and ease and flow and fun. Healing focuses on regulation. Thriving requires re-engagement with life. So, what I mean by this is healing teaches you how to calm yourself, protect yourself, set boundaries, avoid harm, right? So, it's how can I regulate myself? How can I keep myself safe? How can I move through this? Thriving is like, okay, hi, you need to be seen now. You're opening your heart again. You are making yourself visible. You are taking emotional risks. You are letting yourself want things. You're allowing yourself to dream. You move from protection to participation. You're not abandoning safety, but you're no longer organizing your life to avoid pain. Because when you choose to thrive, there is going to be a level of discomfort. When you're choosing to heal, you're finding a steady place where there isn't any discomfort. Another one, hyper independence can be a sign of healing, but it can also block thriving. I know you might not like to hear this one. Many trauma survivors become incredibly self reliant, incredibly independent. And I was the same. I was like, I prided myself on how self sufficient I was. I didn't need anybody else. That was part of my coping mechanism and part of my healing. And it was also around protection, right? But then thriving, it requires you to get support, to seek connection, to receive from yourself and from other people, and a level of softness that maybe we don't allow ourselves when we are so hyper independent. And it's not to say that you can't do it alone, because you can, but you don't have to. Thriving isn't about proving how strong you are. It's about proving, it's not even about proving. It's about allowing ease and your potential to come through. So sometimes when we go through this healing process, it's about how can I be the strong one? How can I, show up for myself? And that's incredible. The next step is how do I do that in a softer way? How can I let people in? How can I let my walls down? How can I welcome connection? Another difference, thriving often brings up new layers of fear, and that doesn't mean you're going backwards. This is really important, really important. We think that when we're healed, we never have any fears again. We think that once we've healed that, everything's fine, I'm good, you know, I've moved past that. But when people start stepping into a place that is going to allow them to thrive, fear, vulnerability, self doubt, that emotional exposure is, of course, going to come up, right? Because when we heal, we kind of create this protective barrier around us. We're like, okay, I'm good now. And then thriving opens that up to expansion. And so naturally, those fears that you had previously, they're still going to be there. They just look a little bit different. And sometimes we're very quick to judge ourselves, to criticize ourselves and say, oh, I'm back where I started. That's not the case at all, because when you have healed, you are not the person, you are not the same person that you once were, right? Just because you have those fears doesn't mean that you've gone backwards. And there is nothing wrong with you. It's just because it's new. Whenever we try something new, fear shows up, right? And if you were trying something new and you didn't have an element of fear, I'd be a little bit concerned, if I'm honest. So just letting yourself be okay with knowing that fears will come up always for everybody, especially when you're stepping into a new way of being. Healing helps you stop abandoning yourself. Thriving helps you start choosing yourself. Healing is often about, or part of it is stopping the harmful, unhealthy, unsupportive habits that you have created. So you might, choose to stop people pleasing or stop self-abandonment or suppressing your emotions or being the good girl or being the reliable one or the steady one. All of those things where it's like you're almost outsourcing your energy, outsourcing your worth because it's easier than claiming it. Because when you choose to thrive, it is actually about consciously choosing yourself, choosing what you want, choosing what fulfills you, choosing what lights you up, choosing what doesn't, saying no to what doesn't. That can be uncomfortable, right? Thriving is proactive, healing's protective. One myth that I see all the time is that you need to be fully healed to start thriving. And it is exactly that. It is a myth. You do not. And sometimes this is where people get stuck, or more so, this is where people hold themselves back from choosing to invest in a coach or choosing to invest in doing something that they want to do because they think, oh, I'm not quite ready yet, or I haven't really done this, or, I'll live fully once I'm healed, once I have no more problems. How many times have we heard that before? I'll do it when everything's good. Thriving is part of healing. And I think you can do your primary healing and get to a place where you would say that you're mostly healed. And then as you continue to expand, you're continuing to heal further parts of you. You don't heal first and then live. They're not two separate things. You heal by living. You might have a time and a period where you are focused on the past, focused on, working through what you've been through. And then at the same time, you start to shift your focus forwards rather than backwards. You heal by expanding. You create self-trust by choosing yourself. You heal, expand, grow, evolve by experiencing safety in new ways. And in order to do anything in new ways, that means that you have to do something new. Probably the biggest shift or the biggest difference between healing and thriving after trauma is that you move from survival mode to self leadership. Survival mode is reactive, protective. Thriving is intentional. When you think about how you operate and function from survival, it's often about how do I avoid pain? How do I keep myself safe? When we lean into the lens of thriving, you're asking yourself, how do I create the life that I actually want? How do I find fulfillment? How do I find purpose? It's the shift from managing symptoms, emotions, the way that you feel, to creating a vision for yourself. And these little intricacies, because they're not big, right? Nothing that I've spoken about in this episode is huge or new, right? I'm sure you have heard everything that I've spoken about, you have heard before, but allowing yourself the time and space to realize and let this sink in terms of, oh, okay, I can actually do this. I don't have to stay in this space of good, protective, small forever. I'm allowed to lean into what I truly want. Healing helps you feel safe in your body. Thriving helps you feel alive in your life. And many people stop at safety, not because they don't want more, but because no one showed them how to trust themselves with more. I'm going to say that again. So many people stay in what is safe because no one has showed them how to trust themselves with more. No one has been there to support them as they step into a new way of being. And that, my friend, is so powerful because we often make ourselves wrong thinking, oh, I just want more for myself, or I wish I was like that, but I can't, or I'm not good enough, or, whatever excuse or reason that we make up. But it's more, no one has shown you how to trust yourself. No one has given you that space, that confidence before you had that confidence in yourself. And that is where I come in. This is my, I guess, area of expertise, my zone of genius, as some people say, creating a space for you to trust yourself as you expand, a place for you to get support when the discomfort of reaching beyond your comfort zone presents itself, and ultimately where you start thriving, right? This is what I do inside Visionaries. Visionaries is my 6 month group coaching container where we go all in on you, your dreams, your confidence, and that big fucking vision that you have for yourself. Because you wouldn't be listening to this podcast if you weren't ready to thrive, if you didn't want more for yourself. Visionaries is the creating and birthing stage of your future where you get to thrive, not just survive. And throughout our time together, because I know that every single person that enters this space is different, is coming in with a different vision, is coming in with different needs and beliefs and thoughts and feelings and all of that. But during our time together, we collaborate, right? I am here to support you with whatever you need. I do give you monthly modules for exploration. This isn't some big, heavy teaching container. This is a container for expansion. So there are, yes, of course, tools, resources, reflections that I give you to allow you to expand, but it's not you come to work, you come to this call and you've done your homework. It's not about that because your vision is more than that. It's not about me telling you what to do. It's about you exploring what you want to do. And when I think about the space that Visionaries already is, it is a mentorship, a collaboration, a space where you get to expand alongside other incredible women. It is for you a space for you, a place and a space where you get to explore what life looks like beyond good. You're kind of like, let's fucking go. That's what I want. It's like the people who are here and they're like, I want more for myself and I'm so ready to do that. That's visionary. You're a visionary. If that's the feeling that you're having, you are a visionary. So if you are ready, and maybe even if you're not ready, if you know and are ready to have someone deeply hold you, see you, nurture you, encourage you, stretch you, and be there for you through absolutely anything, and I mean that, absolutely anything, then this might be the space for you. Visionaries is more than just a coaching container, right? Anyone that steps into Visionaries is someone who is in my life intimately. I know you. You share things with me that maybe you don't share with other people. And that's the beauty of it because you finally have a place to be held and seen and supported as you start to thrive. Because sometimes we also make ourselves wrong for wanting more. We're like, oh, my life's good. I should be grateful. You can still be grateful and want more for yourself. And so if you're in that space, Visionaries is for you as well. And I could talk about Visionaries for hours, but rather than me doing that, if you want to read all about it, get a feel for whether Visionaries is right for you, you can head to jackierogash.com/visionaries. But the link is also in the show notes below. The doors are open. It's not actually the doors are open. That feels really, I don't know, transactional because that's not what Visionaries is. Visionaries is an invitation, right? I'm inviting you in if you are ready for more. It is an application process, so it's not a guarantee that it's not something where someone just comes and pays and joins, because I really want to make sure that we have the right people in there, a group of people who are prepared and committed to show up for themselves. Because when we are all in that same boat together, we uplift each other so, so much. So, if you are ready to thrive, if you are ready to move beyond healed and really expand into fulfillment, I'd love for you to check out Visionaries. As I said, the link's in the show notes below. If you have any questions, if you want me to share anything more, please, please let me know. I'm here for all of it. So I can't wait to see your application come in, and I will speak to you next week.